So let's talk about something called national integration. It's this huge idea, right? How does a country, especially one that's incredibly diverse, manage to weave all of its different threads into one single unified whole? Well, today we're going to dive right into that. And to really get our heads around this, we're going to look at what might be the ultimate case study, India. I mean, think about it. How on earth does a nation with more than 1,600 dialects, a place that's home to pretty much every major world religion, how does it not just hold together, but actually thrive? That's the big puzzle we're tackling today. Okay, so first things first, what are we even talking about when we say national integration? It's a phrase we hear a lot, but what it really means goes so much deeper than just politics or lines on a map. When you get right down to it, national integration is really all about a feeling. It's not about making everyone the same. Instead, it's about creating this deep feeling of togetherness, an emotional and spiritual bond that's supposed to be stronger than any differences in caste, religion, or where you're from. It's that shared sense of belonging. And, this whole idea is just captured perfectly in this one powerful declaration. We are Indian first and Indians last. It's a really potent way of saying what the ultimate goal is, that there's this primary, unifying identity that comes before everything else. Okay, so if that's the big dream, right, how do you actually do it? Well, the whole process really rests on 5 key areas. You can think of them like the 5 pillars holding up the entire building of national unity. And each one of these pillars tackles a different part of society. You've got cultural integration, that's all about blending traditions. Then there's economic integration, which is about closing that gap between the rich and poor. Of course, there's the political side, trying to keep divisive stuff out of how the country is run. This gets backed up by religious tolerance. And finally, social integration, making sure everyone, especially minority groups, really feels like they have an equal seat at the table. Now, let's just zoom in on one of those pillars for a second, the economic one. I mean, it makes sense, right? When tons of people can't find work, when prices are so high that it's a struggle just to get by, or when farmers are in crisis, well, that creates huge economic divides. It makes any kind of shared prosperity feel impossible, and that's a direct threat to unity. And this brings us to the real conflict at the heart of all of this. Because for every single effort to build unity, there are these powerful forces trying to pull the nation in the opposite direction. These are the cracks that are always threatening the very foundation of an integrated nation. You can almost see it as this constant push and pull, a real tug of war happening all the time. On one side, you have these unifying forces like a common history or big national festivals that bring people together. But on the other side, you have these deeply rooted divisive forces, things like casteism and regionalism, that are always creating friction and pulling people apart. So what are these big divisive forces exactly? Well, you've got casteism, which just creates these massive social gulfs, communalism, which can be twisted by politics to pit different religious groups against each other. Then there's regionalism, which often comes from some parts of the country developing faster than others, creating this feeling of unfairness. Even language can become a problem, with linguistic fanaticism trying to make one language a barrier instead of a bridge. Every single one of them attacks that feeling of oneness. And then there's corruption. This metaphor is just perfect. It's not some big, loud, obvious threat. Nope. It's described as being like ants, just quietly and persistently eating away at the trust and fairness that are the very roots of a unified nation. It damages everything from the inside out. So, with all these challenges, with all these forces trying to tear the nation apart, how do you fight back? How do you actually repair those cracks and make the bonds of unity stronger? This is where we get into the deliberate, active strategies for building a more integrated nation. And here's the thing you've got to remember. Integration doesn't just happen. It's an active process. It happens through things like education, teaching shared values to the next generation. It's strengthened by promoting secularism, making sure no single religion gets to dominate. It takes targeted economic policies to help lift up disadvantaged groups, and a real, conscious effort to build what's called emotional unity, that shared pride. Even the media plays a huge role by showing the country's different cultures to each other to build understanding and goodwill. But, out of all of these big ideas, maybe the single most powerful one is looking to the future. It's about investing in the next generation. Because if you can instill that sense of unity in young people, you're literally building the future of the nation. And a fantastic example of this in action is the National Cadet Corps, or NCC. And the scale here, it's just mind-boggling. The NCC has over 1.38 million cadets. That makes it the largest uniformed youth organization on the entire planet. We're talking about young people from every single corner of the country, from all kinds of backgrounds, all brought together under one simple motto: unity and discipline. And this isn't just about wearing a uniform and talking about unity in a classroom. No way. They are actively putting it into practice. These cadets are out there together, taking part in all kinds of social services, planting trees, donating blood, helping out in disaster relief. By literally working side by side to make their communities better, they are actively building the nation. So all this brings us to a final question. The story of national integration, especially in a place like India, is this constant, ongoing, and often difficult process. But in a world that feels like it's getting more and more fractured, maybe the biggest lesson here is in the effort itself, that constant, deliberate work of trying to weave one single nation out of countless different threads. What can we all learn from that? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.